party representing me.
Okay, thank you. Plaintiff, pre-trial matters?
Yes, Your Honor. As it is our first time in your courtroom, we would like to ask your preferences for movement about the well. May we ask for permission or move freely?
You can move freely about the well. You can approach counsel and the bench without permission, but if you approach any witness, I'd like you to ask permission.
Yes, Your Honor. And when an objection is sustained, shall we motion to strike the offending testimony or assume it is stricken?
I will strike it from the record. If I haven't, then you should motion to strike.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has also prepared a bench book with Midland's case law, rules of evidence, and documents of the like. Permission to approach and tender.
Yes. Thank you.
And at this time, Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to invoke Midland's rules of evidence, Rules 603 and 615, the constructive swearing in and sequestration of all witnesses, barring party representatives.
So invoked.
And at this time, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Thank you. Defense, any pre-trial matters?
A few, Your Honor. First, we prepared a notice of intent to offer character evidence on the plaintiff's witnesses. It's been seen and signed by both counsels. Permission to approach and tender.
Yes. Thank you.
And Your Honor, if I can ask you to open up that bench book and turn to the orange case law tab.
Okay.
Just one case to bring to Your Honor's notice on page 12, the very last page, at the very bottom of that page.
Yeah.
Borealis Industries v. Eleanor Hobbs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to read all of it out, Your Honor, but it simply states that if the defense elects to pursue an alternative suspect theory, it is not an affirmative defense.
Okay.
And with that, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay, thank you. If there are no further pre-trial matters, then plaintiff, do you have an opening?
Yes, Your Honor. May I begin?
When you're ready.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury, may it please the court. Find the key, and you found the killer. If your life got flipped on its head, what would you do? If you lost your income, your house, your car, all in the blink of an eye? It's a difficult question to answer, but it's the question that the defendant, Taylor Hobson, had to answer in April of 2023. Their father, Avery Bancroft, funded their life of luxury for over a decade before randomly cutting them off overnight. Worse than that, Avery Bancroft threatened to take them out of his will, endangering her $380 million birthright. Ms. Hobson needed an answer to that question, and she needed one fast. So when she followed her father to Australia and boarded the Mid-Riverina Express, she had only one thing in mind. 3 days later, Avery Bancroft was dead, his cause of death being attributed to the rat poison that was found in his system. Now, our client has brought a suit against Taylor Hobson. Ms. Hobson is being sued under the Slayer statute. That means that if Ms. Hobson is found to have been involved in the death of her father, she becomes ineligible to inherit that $380 million. Now, today's case is not a criminal case. It's a civil case. We're not here to decide whether or not Taylor Hobson is guilty of murder. We're here to decide whether or not she's eligible to inherit that money. And because this is a civil case, our burden is by a preponderance of the evidence. That means that if it's more likely than not that Taylor Hobson did it, you must find her liable. If the scales of justice tip even slightly in favor of the plaintiff, she cannot inherit anything. And this burden, it's entirely on the plaintiff. And it's a burden that we embrace. If you get to the end of today's trial and we haven't proved that it's more likely that Taylor Hobson did it, by all means, find her not liable. But you will not be able to. Because there's only one person who could have done it. But find the key, and you found the killer. You see, the cabins aboard the Mid-Riverina Express locked. Avery Bancroft stayed in cabin 1, and the only way you could get access is if you had a key. That's what I want you to focus on, members of the jury. Find the key, and you found the killer. So what keys were there? Well, Mr. Bancroft's assistant is going to take that stand and he'll tell you that there were only two. One never left Mr. Bancroft's side, but the other was in his possession, and it went missing while he was aboard the train. But it wasn't lost forever. Two other passengers, a published author and a private investigator, were able to find it. But they didn't find it lost in some corner or tucked away underneath the couch cushions. No. They found it in the hands of Taylor Hobson. Find the key, and you found the killer. But that's not all they saw. That author will tell you that she was inside Taylor Hobson's room. And while she was in there, tucked away inside of a cabinet, she found a box of rat poison. The same rat poison that was used to kill Avery Bancroft. So where'd the rat poison end up? The private investigator will tell you that. While Avery Bancroft's body was still warm, Miss Hobson, she wasn't mourning the death of her father. She was disposing of the evidence. And when that investigator followed her and looked inside of her garbage, she found the same box of rat poison. Taylor Hobson had the poison. She had $380 million on the line, and she had the key. So members of the jury, I want you to keep your eyes open and look for that key. Because there's only one person who had it, Taylor Hobson. And once you found the key, you found the killer. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Jonah Blanchard, will ask you to find Taylor Hobson liable. Thank you.
Thank you. And 1 second.
Yes, Your Honor.
Opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury, may it please the court. Harley Kim wanted Avery Bancroft out of the picture. On April 22nd, 2024, the Mid-Riverina Express departed from Sydney, Australia, headed for Perth. It was meant to be a thrilling vacation, filled with amazing views and food, but that trip took a sharp turn when Avery Bancroft, the CEO of Bancroft Estates, was found dead in his cabin. Members of the jury, the plaintiff came before you and they tried to tell you that Taylor Hobson killed her own father. But members of the jury, they didn't mention another passenger. A passenger who wanted Avery Bancroft out of the picture. A passenger who had the means, motive, and opportunity to kill Mr. Bancroft. Today you'll hear about Harley Kim, a photojournalist who is on the Mid-Riverina Express. You'll learn that Harley Kim has wanted an exclusive interview with Mr. Bancroft for years. That ever since the opening of Mr. Bancroft's Black Bear Casino, and ever since that casino burned down, Harley Kim has held nothing but resentment for Mr. Bancroft. For her brother's struggles, his gambling addiction, and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of debt. At the same time, Harley Kim is looking to break that next big story, to save her career as a journalist. So she figures out what she needs to do. She books a ticket on the Mid-Riverina Express, the same train she knew Mr. Bancroft would be on. And she asks him for that interview. When Mr. Bancroft's answer is no, her plan changed like that. From that day on, from the very first day on the train, from April 22nd, Harley Kim knows she must get Mr. Bancroft out of the picture for good. Now, moments ago, Mr. Colfer came before you and he didn't mention any of this. He never even mentioned the name Harley Kim. But members of the jury, the defense believes you must get the full picture in order to understand who really killed Mr. Avery Bancroft. It's the plaintiff in today's case who holds the burden of proof. They must prove to you by a preponderance of the evidence that Taylor Hobson killed her own father. As the defense in today's case, we don't hold a burden. We don't need to bring you any evidence or call a single witness, but we will. Because we believe you must hear the facts of the case that the plaintiff doesn't want you to consider. We'll do this by calling 3 witnesses for you today. First, you'll hear from Ashley Conn, who is a passenger on the Mid-Riverina Express. Ms. Conn will tell you about Avery Bancroft's last week on that train. And she'll tell you how that rat poison that was mentioned was publicly accessible to all passengers in the open storage area right there in the middle of the shelf. She'll also tell you about Harley Kim's actions on the night before Mr. Bancroft's death. Next, you'll hear from a doctor in clinical psychology, Dr. Dana Haskins. Dr. Haskins will explain that he performed a psychological evaluation on Miss Taylor Hobson. He'll tell you what the signs of an intentional killer are and the traits that are typically shown. He'll tell you that Taylor Hobson does not fit the profile of an intentional killer who would murder her own father over an inheritance. Finally, you'll hear from the daughter of the deceased herself, Miss Taylor Hobson. She'll explain to you what her relationship with her father was really like. But more importantly, you'll hear about Harley Kim's actions on the train. So after Harley Kim heard that no from Mr. Bancroft about the interview that Harley Kim wanted so bad, Miss Kim followed Miss Hobson, stalked Miss Hobson, broke into her cabin, harassed her, and photographed her. Finally, she'll make it clear that she would never have a hand in the death of her own father. Members of the jury, at the conclusion of today's trial, my co-counsel Harper Quaintance will come before you and ask you to reflect on all the evidence you've heard throughout trial today. She'll ask you to pay close attention to the holes in the plaintiff's case. She'll ask you to remember that Harley Kim wanted Avery Bancroft out of the picture and to find Taylor Hobson not liable. Thank you.
1 second, please. Plaintiff, do you have witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Kirby Doolittle to the stand.
Okay.
Someone sit near.
And you're constructively sworn in.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me know when I can proceed.
Okay, you may proceed.
Why don't you state your name for the record?
Good afternoon. My name is Kirby Doolittle.
Do you know how you're involved in today's case, Mr. Doolittle?
I do know. I knew Avery Bancroft, in fact. We'd been traveling together for just over a year before we boarded the Mid-Riverina Express. I was working as his personal assistant.
Why don't you tell the jury a bit about what that job entailed?
Yeah, when I started back in 2022, it was a very traditional PA job. Fetching lunch, drafting emails, that sort of stuff. But everything changed in 2023. We started traveling together and he really opened up to me.
Mr. Doolittle, are you familiar with the Mid-Riverina Express?
Yes, that's that train that we went on. It was this train from across the totality of Australia, from Perth to Sydney. We booked the king bed in cabin 1 in the platinum section, which was this cute 3-car little luxury area.
Besides Mr. Bancroft, did you know anyone else on that train ride?
Yeah, I did actually. One of Avery's children, Taylor Hobson. It was a complete surprise, but she was on the train too.
Why was it a surprise to see the defendant on the Mid-Riverina Express?
Well, Taylor never told Avery or I that she was going to be there. And frankly, Avery and Taylor's relationship was a bit contentious.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Avery used to send Taylor this allowance every month of $50,000. He started back in 2011, but he cut her off in 2023. After that, their arguments started turning more towards his will. It was a whole thing.
Would you recognize the last will and testament of Avery Bancroft if I showed it to you today in court?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, as I approach opposing counsel, permission to approach the witness with what has been pre-entered for stipulation 26 as Exhibit 6.
Yes, permission granted.
Would you like a copy?
Please.
What have I just handed you?
This is the will of Avery Bancroft.
Could you tell us how much this will gives to Taylor Hobson?
This will leaves 95% of his estate to Taylor. So if she's eligible, that's about $386 million.
Thank you. Permission to approach and collect?
Yes, permission.
Now, I'd like to move on and fast forward to April. You mentioned Taylor Hobson was on the train. Did you ever get to talk to the defendant on the Mid-Riverina Express?
I ran into Taylor a couple of times, breakfast here, dinner there. Taylor was even in cabin 1 once.
When did you see the defendant inside of cabin 1?
It was on April 23rd. I was coming back from breakfast and I opened the door to cabin 1 and I looked inside and there was Taylor Hobson. I asked what she was doing in there and she told me that she must have had the wrong cabin. And honestly though, I'm not entirely sure how she got inside.
Why aren't you sure how the defendant got into cabin 1?
Well, I watched Avery lock the door before we went to breakfast. And there were only 2 keys to cabin 1.
Who had these keys, Mr. Doolittle?
Well, when we boarded, Avery and I were each given a key. Avery kept his on his at all time, and I put mine right on my keychain.
Would you recognize a series of photographs of your keychain if I showed them to you today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Permission to approach as I show opposing counsel.
Permission granted.
And would you like a copy, Your Honor?
Yes, please.
What have I just handed you, Mr. Doolittle?
These are 3 photos of my keys. This first one I took a couple days before we boarded. This second one was taken on the 25th. And this last one is a solo of my Chuggy's keychain. It's very special.
Do these look like a true and accurate copy of your keychain?
Yes, absolutely they do.
At this time, the plaintiff submits Exhibits 16A through C into evidence.
Any objections, defense?
No, Your Honor.
Alright, they're entered into evidence.
Mr. Doolittle, were these keys on your person the entire train ride?
No, actually, it's kind of embarrassing. I got my key, I put it on my keychain, I put my keychain down, and then the next time I needed my keychain, I couldn't find it.
Did you ever get your keys back?
Yeah, I did, but not in time to save me from being locked out.
When did you get locked out of cabin 1?
On the morning of the 25th. I'd been out working on this project all morning, and at about 4 a.m. I swung by cabin 1 just to see if Avery was awake. I knocked on the door.
Was there a response when you knocked on the door?
There was, but it wasn't from Avery. I know his voice. It was Taylor Hobson. Taylor was whispering for me to go away.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay. These are out-of-court statements that you're using for the truth of the matter.
Respond.
The statement in question was go away, which is a command. There's no truth of the matter in that sentence.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor, we don't know who this person inside of the cabin is talking to. We have it on a good faith basis that Kirby Doolittle was unable to see the person that was talking. We don't know if they're commanding someone else to do this or if it even is a command, if they're repeating something or referencing something else.
One more response, please.
Whoever that the person was talking to, it doesn't matter. It is still a command, and until there is a truth of the matter that can be delivered, it's not hearsay.
Yeah, I'm gonna overrule the objection. I don't see why it would be for the truth of the matter.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Doolittle, I want to remind the jury, whose voice did you hear behind the locked door in cabin 1?
It was Taylor Hobson. They were whispering for me to go away, but it's not like I could get inside, so I left and circled back an hour later to see if Avery had woken up.
What did you find when you circled back to cabin 1?
Well, the door was unlocked now, and my keys were inside, but so was Avery. He wasn't in bed. He was on the floor, unconscious. I ran down the hallway to get the doctor on board. She performed CPR, but it didn't save him.
Mr. Doolittle, did you ever get a chance to talk to the defendant about what happened on April 25th?
No, I didn't. The next time Taylor and I spoke was on May 2nd, when she'd inherited Avery's job, when she fired me.
Do you know why the defendant fired you?
We were getting into an argument about her dad. I said that Avery was a decent man, and Taylor said the only decent thing he'd ever done was die. she just felt like so callous.
Why do you say that?
Well, one of the last things Taylor said to me before I left was, I didn't let Avery get in my way. I'm not gonna let you ruin this now.
No further questions. Permission to approach and collect the exhibit?
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
One minute, please. You're right.
Good morning, Mr. Doolittle. I'd like to start by expressing my condolences for the loss of your boss.
Thank you.
My name is Katie Scott, and I just have a couple questions for you today.
Good afternoon, Ms. Scott.
Now, I'd like to talk about why you're testifying here for the plaintiff. You stated on direct that you were fired from Bancroft Estates,
Yes, that's correct.
and it was Taylor Hobson who fired you?
Yes, she told me that Avery trusted me, and that was enough for her to fire.
Well, and today, you're testifying against the woman who fired you, is that correct?
I'm not testifying against anyone, I'm just here to tell the truth.
Will you understand that Taylor Hobson is the defendant in today's case?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to talk about something that you didn't mention on direct. Do you know the storage area of the Mid Riverina Express?
Yes, I do.
And you're aware that it was easily accessible?
Yeah,
All you had to do was walk through the storage area?
that's correct.
And that there was a box of rat poison there that was open to anyone without a locked door?
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation. While Mr. Doolittle can talk about what he was allowed to do, he cannot talk about what everyone was allowed to do.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
As the witness just stated, this was in the storage area, which was a public place on the train, that there was no locked door. If this witness was able to enter there without a door, without any locks barriering them from entering this, they're able to testify to the fact that that was an open spot on the train.
And your response?
If I may, I'm not talking about the physical access to anything in the storage cabin, but opposing counsel is questioning about if people could take it. We don't know anything about what the restrictions on the passengers were, and certainly Mr. Doolittle wouldn't.
This is cross. I'm gonna overrule the objection. I'm not gonna strike anything from the record, but going forward, try to word it a little closer.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doolittle, it was accessible to you on the train, that's correct?
That's correct. The cabins were locked, but the storage closet wasn't.
Now, I'd like to talk about how you began this trip on the Mid Riverina Express. You made an Instagram post before you left on the train, is that correct?
I did.
Would you recognize it if I were to show it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Now approaching opposing counsel, and the witness in turn with what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 9. Would Your Honor like a courtesy copy? Now, Mr. Doolittle, this is your Instagram post that you made on February 1st, is that correct?
That's correct. That's my username, Kirby in the Spotlight.
And it looks exactly like how you last saw it?
Yeah.
Hasn't been changed or altered in any way?
Nope.
And now the defense moves to admit Exhibit 9.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Respond.
Elaborate, please.
Yes, I would like to point out the specific statements of any words on the tickets in the photograph and the caption. These are the human-made statements in this that are being used for the truth of the matter in today's case.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
All the facts on this ticket have already been laid onto the record and stipulated in today's case that Kirby Doolittle and Mr. Bancroft were on the Mid Riverina Express. We're not using these for the truth of the matter asserted, but instead for the effect on the listener, that anyone who saw this Instagram post would be made aware that they were on this train.
And what about the caption?
The caption we're open to redacting.
So you want the content of the post?
Yes, that's correct.
For what purpose? Out of the purview of the witness.
The effect on the
The
listener.
jury.
To basically show that anyone can know that Mr. Bancroft was in cabin 1, that they left for the Mid Riverina Express on that day, that they'd be in the platinum section.
You want the purpose of this is to show this was a public Instagram post?
Correct, yes.
Okay, response?
The plaintiff is amenable to redacting the caption and admitting this document with that redaction.
Then it will be entered in with the redaction.
Yes, Your Honor. May I ask if the light count is still accessible?
Yeah. I mean, unless,
No, actually, I would object to the like count. Likes are human-made statements of agreement with a post. That is hearsay.
on what? On hearsay? Yeah, I'm gonna not redact the light count, I will redact the caption, and it's entered with that redaction.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Doolittle, this was a post that you made on February 1st, that's correct?
That's correct.
And it states that Mr. Bancroft and yourself would be staying in cabin 1.
Yes, it does. Well, it just says that I'm staying in cabin 1, but me and Avery were staying there together. So.
Right, it states that you'd be in the platinum section,
Yes, it does.
that you were on the Mid-Riverina Express.
That's correct.
And this post has 40,000 likes.
40,203.
Right, you would say it's a viral post in your opinion?
Yeah, probably.
The most viral of all your Instagram posts.
Yeah.
Now approaching the witness to retrieve the exhibit.
Yeah.
Now, I'd like to ask about an article you might be aware of. Do you know about the Black Bear Casino?
Yes, I do. It was one of Avery's properties, but it burned down back in 2022.
Right.
It's what prompted us to start traveling.
Would you recognize an article about that Black Bear Casino fire?
Yeah, probably.
Now approaching the witness and opposing counsel with Exhibit 21. Permission to approach?
Yes.
Would Your Honor like a courtesy copy? And let the record reflect that Exhibit 21 is pre-admitted in today's case. Now, Mr. Doolittle, if you could look at the third column, the third paragraph, what starts with Harley Kim.
Harley Kim. Harley Kim was one of my old drinking buddies. I saw him on the train.
Right. Now, if you could read silently as I read aloud. Harley Kim didn't know any of the victims of the fire, but spoke about how Avery Bancroft ruined other lives, including that of their sibling, who suffered from a crippling gambling addiction. Harley Kim spoke about how Bancroft's casino extended easy credit to those desperate to gamble, leaving their sibling with a mountain of debt they can never escape. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's actually a few passengers from the train in this article. Dana Haskins is here, Harley Kim. It was a big deal for most people in Midlands.
Right, it affected a lot of the Midlands community.
Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor, to speculation.
On what statement?
It affected a lot of the Midlands community. Well, Kruger Doolittle is a part of the Midlands community. He's only one part and cannot speak to the rest and how it affected them.
I'm gonna strike counsel's statement from the record, not the witnesses.
Yes, Your Honor. And if you look at that last section, there's a quote from Harley Kim. You see that there?
Yeah.
If you could read silently as I read aloud, Harley Kim said, "The loss of life is tragic," they said, "but it's a blessing that Bancroft and his casino are gone for good." Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
All right, now approaching the witness to retrieve the exhibit.
That was back in 2023. When I saw Harley Kim on the train, they didn't talk about that at all. I guess they must have gotten over it.
Well, I'd like to ask you about Harley Kim and what they did on the train. Do you remember seeing Harley Kim on April 24th?
Oh, on the 24th? Could you be more specific?
Right, this was the day before Mr. Bancroft died, and Mr. Bancroft told you that he wanted to leave the train a day early.
Yes, that's correct. We were going to get off at the supply stop that next morning.
Right, and you were in that car train with all the passengers of the Platinum section.
Yeah, you could have heard a glass drop. I turned around and Taylor was looking at us all weird.
Well, and when I say all the passengers of the Platinum section, that includes Harley Kim, correct?
Yeah, probably. But they didn't do anything that stuck out to me at the time.
Right, and when Mr. Bancroft said that they were planning on leaving the train a day early, Harley Kim and the rest of the passengers all stared at you and Mr. Bancroft?
Yes, they did.
Now, I'd like to talk about one last thing. You mentioned the will on direct examination, is that correct?
Avery Bancroft's will. Yes.
Would you recognize that if I were to show it to you again?
Yes, I would still recognize it. Apologies. Ugh.
Now approaching the witness and opposing counsel, which one has already been admitted as Exhibit 6. Permission to approach the witness?
Yes. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Doolittle, you're familiar with this will, correct?
Yes, still am.
And you see that it states that the main benefactor would have been Taylor Hobson.
Yeah, 95% of Bancroft's estate, so about $386 million.
But underneath Taylor Hobson's name is listed Shannon Shahid.
Yeah, Shannon's listed as the other beneficiary at about 5%.
And Shannon Shahid is the plaintiff in today's case, is that correct?
Yeah.
And she's only listed at
Objection
5.
to relevance, if I may.
Yes.
These facts are all stipulated. In fact, it is the very groundwork that allows this case to be proceeding. I'm not sure why opposing counsel is laying it onto the record.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
As the plaintiff in today's case, it is highly probative for the jury to hear how much she stood to gain with the will as it was in 2015 compared to what she hopes to earn today through today's case. It's a civil trial about the inheritance that's featured on this will.
Objection overruled.
Yes.
It's not relevant.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, that was correct that Shannon Shahid is listed at only 5% compared to 95%.
That's correct.
And she's the plaintiff in today's case, that's correct.
Yeah, looks like it.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions. Permission to retreat?
Yes. Is there any direct?
No redirect. We just ask that Mr. Doolittle be allowed to leave.
Yes. You are dismissed, Mr.
Thank
Doolittle.
you. Have a wonderful day.
Please give the judge 1 second. Plaintiff, you have another witness.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, plaintiff calls Ms. Rory Shelton to the stand.
Ms. Shelton, you are under oath.
Okay, this is so exciting.
Good afternoon. May you please state your name for the record?
Hello, I'm Rory Shelton.
And Ms. Shelton, what do you do for a living?
Well, I like to say that I'm fun by nature and by trade. You see, I'm a mascot, Marty, the marsupial of the Melbourne Marsupials. It's a football team.
Ms. Shelton, how did you get involved in today's case?
Well, I was on the Mid-Riverina Express. Actually, you know, it's a funny story because I went out to sign autographs after a game and nobody took me up on that. But when I went back to the locker room, my team had left without me. Can you imagine?
If your team left without you, how did you get on the train?
Well, I needed to find a way to get to the next location on my lonesome, so I took a train.
The train, did you recognize anyone on the Mid-Riverina Express?
Oh, golly, you know, just about everyone there was from Midlands.
How did the first night of the Mid-Riverina Express go?
Well, there was this lovely welcome dinner, and then I ended up giving my spot in my cabin away to Kirby Doolittle. Yeah, he was my drinking buddy back in the day, actually. We used to go to the same bar, Chuggy's, until it burned down. That is, we didn't go after that.
If you let Mr. Doolittle have your cabin, where were you sleeping?
Oh, I was sleeping in the crew cabin on the floor, but me and the crew gained a phenomenal rapport.
Report in what way?
Well, I was unexpectedly upgraded from passenger to crew member honoree. I even got the trust to replenish towels in the cabins.
And how did those tasks go?
Pretty well, if I do say so myself. Except, you know, when I got to Bancroft's cabin, cabin 1, I didn't go in because I could hear him arguing with Taylor.
Did you hear what this argument was about?
Yes, Taylor was yelling about how to manage money.
And what happened after this argument?
Well, Taylor walked out looking very upset. They were mumbling something about the Black Bear Casino Fire Victims Fund. I was very confused, so I asked what the problem was, and they said, "My father." Very dramatic.
Did you notice anything with the defendant?
Yes, they had a set of keys.
Would you recognize those keys if I showed them to you today in court?
Oh, yes.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm showing opposing counsel exhibit 16. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Thank you.
I believe you already have a courtesy copy.
Yes,
Ms. Shelton, are these those same keys?
Yes, so these are the keys that I saw, except when I saw them, they had an extra key on them, very ornate like to open the cabins.
Your Honor, permission to retrieve the exhibit. Now, what happened after this argument with the defendant?
Well, I was trying to cheer up Taylor, mascot instincts, and then Taylor followed me all the way to the storage area. The crew cabin was right next to there.
Did the defendant do anything in the storage area?
You know, well, I had asked Taylor to watch my favorite show with me, and they declined, but when they were leaving, I saw them grab something from one of the shelves.
Did you see what the defendant grabbed?
Not exactly, but there's not much stuff in there, you know, just
tools, rodenticide, stuff like that.
Would you recognize the label of that rodenticide as shown to you today in court?
Oh, yeah.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm approaching the opposing counsel with Exhibit 41A. May I approach the witness? Would you like a courtesy copy, please? Now, Ms. Shelton, is this that exact same label that you saw in the storage area?
Yes, it is. Same color and everything.
It's a fair and accurate copy.
I would say so.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff requests to move Exhibit 41 into evidence.
Any objections?
Without objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so any evidence?
Now, did any interaction occur after Taylor Hobson left the storage area?
No, but I realized that in my haste to cheer up Taylor, I had forgotten to put towels in Bancroft's cabin, so I went back over there.
And did you see anything in Mr. Bancroft's cabin?
Yes, I did. Okay, there was this paper written in purple ink, very fancy, holographic, sparkly, you know, the scented kind, and it said something about the Black Bear Casino Fire Victims Fund, which caught my interest because, you know, Taylor was mumbling about that after their argument earlier. I read the whole thing.
Did Mr. Bancroft see you look at this document?
He definitely did, because he had told me he was worried that once he signed it, it was going to get into the hands of the tabloids.
Would you
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
Your Honor, if I may direct you to Midland's case law, Midland's Rule 8033. This is emotional and mental state of mind. Mr. Bancroft was expressing his emotional state, his worries to the witness in turn, and therefore it is an exception to hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sorry, just one question. Are you directing me to case law, or are you directing me to the hearsay?
Midland's Rules of Evidence.
Case law, okay.
Yes.
Yes, respond please.
Yes, Your Honor. While I understand that 8033 does allow for the introduction of emotional states, this statement specifically, while it includes an emotion, actually constitutes as more of a belief than an emotional state. And 8033 specifically precludes the introduction of beliefs into evidence. Therefore, this statement would still be hearsay.
And response?
Your Honor, Mr. Bancroft is giving context as to what his emotional state is that is fully included within the 8033 exception. And therefore, it is an exception to hearsay once again.
Response, Your Honor.
Briefly.
Defense still holds that this constitutes more of a belief. While that specific emotion might be a context, we can say that Mr. Bancroft was upset. However, the following portion of the statement afterwards constitutes a belief and is inadmissible.
Repeat the statement.
Oh, I said that he said he was worried that if he signed it, it was going to get into the hands of the tabloids.
Yeah, I'm gonna sustain the objection. That is hearsay, and that is not within the exception.
Yes, Your Honor.
Motion to strike, Your Honor.
Yes, the testimony is stricken from the record.
Ms. Shelton, would you recognize this document as shown in court to you today?
Oh, yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel and with Exhibit 8. For permission to approach the witness. Your Honor, would you like a courtesy copy?
Yes.
Ms. Shelton, you recognize this document?
Yes, I do. This is the document that I saw in Avery Bancroft's cabin.
It's a fair and accurate representation of what you read.
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff motions to move Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Is there objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Okay.
Your Honor, if you could look at exception 8033 under a motive, intent, or plan. This written will is a written motive and plan on how Mr. Bancroft wishes the Bancroft estates to be distributed in the events of his death, and therefore it is an exception to hearsay.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. First, we don't have any way to determine whether or not Mr. Bancroft was actually the declarant in this case. It might say on the document last will and testament of Avery Bancroft. However, there is no way for this witness to state whether or not this actually came from Mr. Bancroft and is in fact his motive, intent, or plan. Without any notifiable or discernible declarant for this specific document, it's inadmissible.
Your Honor, may I respond on those grounds?
No.
Your Honor, the witness testified to seeing this document inside of cabin 1. The witness testified to seeing Mr. Bancroft also in that cabin with this document and the purple pen that the witness believes was written, that this document was written in.
I'm so sorry.
By a preponderance of the evidence, it is more likely than not that Mr. Bancroft was the declarant of this will, of this motive, intent, or plan.
final response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. If I can direct your attention to a pretrial order in this case.
Yes.
So it's on page 3, pretrial order number 7, entitled Holographic Will.
That's right here.
Yes.
So, Your Honor, this specific portion of the pretrial order, while it is discussing the legal effect of a holographic will, states that there needs to be some sort of way to determine whether or not the will is written and executed in the testator's own hand. There is no way, based upon a preponderance of the evidence, that this witness can reasonably testify that this will was written by Mr. Avery Bancroft. Just because he has a pen, just because it was in his cabin, there is no way for this witness, based upon the evidence provided on the record, to actually establish that this is in fact written by him. It is still hearsay and inadmissible.
Your argument is extremely well taken, plaintiff, but I'm inclined to agree with the defense because of the declarant issue. Because there's no signature and we have this witness does not seem to have any knowledge of the handwriting, specifically the holographic will has to be in the declarant's handwriting. There is no evidence that this is definitely by preponderance of the evidence declarant of Avery, so I'm gonna sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Motion to strike any reference to this will.
I'm going to strike any reference as this being Avery Bancroft's will. All the other evidence that was factually observed is fine, but
Yes, Your Honor.
the fact that this was Avery Bancroft's holographic will is stricken.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Shelton, I would like to move forward and take you to April 25th, the day of Mr. Bancroft's death. Did you notice anything on that day?
Yes, I did. I found something in a trash can. So he was all crumpled on the ground. He was pointing to a lockbox, actually, but when I walked over, the trash can was right next to it, and I saw, ripped up in there, the document in the trash can.
Right. Did you see anything else on April 25th, Ms. Shelton?
Yes. When I left the cabin, Taylor Hobson's door was propped open, and I saw on the ground a Chuggy's keychain, which is just so hard to get because, I've tried. They're like an heirloom or something.
Would you recognize that keychain as shown to you today in court?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 16A that is already in evidence. Permission to approach the witness.
Thank you.
Ms. Shelton, is that same keychain?
Yes, it is.
And you found this keychain in Taylor Hobson's cabin?
Yes, I did.
Did you see anything else in the defendant's cabin?
Not on the 25th, but the day before when I was refreshing the towels. In Taylor's cabinet.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation. I'd ask that if the witness is going to testify about this, that opposing counsel actually ask how this actually became relevant. Going back and forth chronologically, there's no foundation for this testimony.
Response.
Your Honor, the witness has already testified to have seen a piece of evidence inside of the defendant's cabin, and I'm simply asking if they had seen anything else in the cabin. I believe that is foundation enough.
The question was, did you see anything else in the?
Yes.
The objection's overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
So Ms. Shelton, I'll ask you again. Did you see anything else in the defendant's cabin?
Yes, I did. So on the 24th, when I was refreshing the towels, in Taylor Hobson's bathroom cabinet, I saw something that I didn't see outside of the storage area any other time.
Ms. Shelton, you mentioned that you saw something. What exactly did you see in the defendant's cabin?
Well, I found a box of rodenticide.
Your Honor, at this time I have no further questions. Permission to retrieve the exhibits from the witness.
Yes. Cross-examination to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Just one moment.
Actually, you're gonna hold.
Yeah, no worries. May I proceed?
What's yours?
Good afternoon, Ms. Shelton. My name is Fawaz Omer, and I just have some questions about your testimony.
Of course, yes.
So I want to pick up right where you left off. You said that you found a box of rodenticide in Miss Hobson's cabin.
Yes, that's correct.
You have no idea how it got there.
No, I guess not.
You never saw anybody handle it.
No.
So you cannot tell us for certain that Miss Hobson put it in her cabin.
No, only that I never saw it anywhere else.
I want to talk about something else that you said you saw in Miss Hobson's cabin. You said you saw a pair of keys. Would you recognize those if I showed them to you?
Oh, yes, of course.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel. And permission to pursue witness with the same. Copies of Exhibit 16. Ms. Shelton, if I can direct you specifically to 16C, that keychain.
Yes, hold on.
Feel free to take it out. So you said you saw that keychain on the floor of Miss Hobson's cabin,
Yes, very lovely keychain. I've always wanted one.
but you don't know how it got there.
No, I guess not.
You owned one yourself at one point, did you not?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sorry, you said you wanted one, but you have seen this kind of keychain with different people before,
Yes, I have.
but you have no idea how it got there.
No, I don't.
You can't say if someone put it there.
No.
Thank you. Permission to approach and retrieve.
I just want to put it back in order for you.
Thank you so much. Now, Ms. Shelton, I want to move to your time on the Mid Riverina Express. Your time on there was originally unplanned.
Oh, yes. It was very exciting.
But like you said on direct examination, you recognized a lot of people who were on that train.
Yes, it's very silly, coincidences like that.
And one of them specifically was Mr. Avery Bancroft.
Oh, yes. He owes me a little bit of money.
Right, and you went to approach him about this money.
Yeah, I mean, $100,000, huh?
But you hadn't planned on doing that.
Well, no, I didn't know he was going to be there.
Right, I want to talk a little bit about that. You didn't know he was going to be there.
No.
And Ms. Shelton, would you recognize an article from the Midlands Courier Gazette if I were to show it to you in court today?
Oh, yes, I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel. And permission to approach a witness with the same. With Exhibit 21. Now, Ms. Shelton, if I can direct your attention to the furthest right column under the heading Bancroft Signing. Let me know when you're there.
Yes, I see it.
Okay, if you could read silently as I read aloud. Elusive multimillionaire Avery Bancroft may be in Australia. Blurry photos of a man who fits the general description of Mr. Bancroft have been popping up on various social media sites. Photos allegedly taken in a variety of Australian locales, including Melbourne and Sydney. Mr. Bancroft disappeared from the public eye last year, shortly after the Black Bear Casino, owned by Mr. Bancroft, burned to the ground. Rumors have swirled ever since that he was involved in the fire. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Permission to approach and retrieve. Thank you, Sean. Now, I want to get back to your time on the Mid Riverina Express. You went on a number of excursions while you were there, isn't that right?
Yes, they were lovely.
Including on the 23rd, you went on a shopping excursion to Hondorf, right?
Yes, this train seemed very expensive. I actually don't know how much I spent. I'm not good with conversions and everything. It's Australian dollars. So I'm hoping I didn't spend that much to sleep on the floor.
And you went on that shopping excursion with one Harley Kim. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, we talked a little bit.
Yeah, you both bonded over your mutual dislike of Mr. Avery Bancroft.
Yeah, we did.
And Harley Kim told you that they were upset with Mr. Bancroft about the Black Bear Casino fire.
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes.
Pursuant to Rule 8033, this is a mental or emotional or physical condition, and specifically relating to the emotional condition of Ms. Harley Kim being upset with Mr. Bancroft about the Black Bear Casino fire.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, please.
Pursuant to the previous hearsay ruling, this statement would not fall under exception 8033. Maybe the words "I'm upset," but specifically the context of with Mr. Bancroft about the Black Bear Casino, that is still hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, can you repeat the statement, please?
Yes, Your Honor. The statement was she was upset with Mr. Bancroft about the Black Bear Casino fire. Directly addressing opposing counsel's objection, your previous ruling was regarding a statement of belief in the statement being offered by opposing counsel. This statement in particular does not offer a statement of belief. It is simply an emotional condition related to the mental condition of Ms. Harley Kim. Therefore, your previous ruling would not necessarily hold. However, that's up to Your Honor's discretion.
I'm going to sustain the objection. It's not really what 803 is getting at.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Shelton, while you were discussing your mutual
It's
dislike
stricken
of...
from the road. Sorry, it's stricken from the road.
Yes, Your Honor. While you were discussing your dislike of Mr. Bancroft, Ms. Kim told you, I despise that man, and I hope karma pays him back in a big way. Is that
Objection,
correct?
Your Honor, to hearsay.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah.
This, pursuant to Rule 8033, is a mental or emotional condition. There is no statement of belief inherent in this statement. It is all about the emotional condition of the declarant.
Response.
Your Honor, I believe that exception does not fall for the first part of the statement. I despise that man. May opposing counsel please repeat the second half of the statement?
Your Honor, the entirety of the statement was, I despise that man, and I hope karma pays him back in a big way. The first is an emotional condition under Rule 8033. The second is a motive, intent, or plan, specifically intent, that Harley Kim intends that something pay Mr. Bancroft back.
Your Honor, I do not believe that the second half of the statement, I hope karma pays him back, is a motive, intent, or plan. The motive, intent, or plan is for the declarant, and karma is not a declarant within this statement. Therefore, it is still hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Briefly.
Karma is not the declarant, it's Harley Kim.
Right.
Your arguments are well taken, but once again, 803 is, these sound like opinions to me as opposed to an emotional condition, and there's a difference, so I'm going to sustain your action.
To both parts of the statement, Your Honor?
Yes,
Yes, Your Honor.
it's stricken from the record.
So I want to be clear, Ms. Shelton. Ms. Kim went on this excursion with you.
Yes, that's true.
And the entire time, Ms. Kim seemed to be taking pictures of Taylor Hobson and their partner. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And on the next day, you, what happened on your excursions? You went to a hiking excursion. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, I did.
And then when you returned, you saw Harley Kim again.
Yes.
And Harley Kim, at that point, was interacting with Mr. Bancroft, or attempting to.
Oh, yes, was.
And Mr. Bancroft blew off Ms. Kim.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was about.
And then I want to go to the next day, April 25th. That's the day Mr. Bancroft passed.
Yes.
And at that time, you saw a number of people in Mr. Bancroft's cabin as he was being treated.
Yeah, pretty much everyone was there. I mean, there was a lot of commotion about.
And Harley Kim was there.
Yes, that's true.
Harley Kim was taking photos of the scene.
Yes, it seemed to be making Taylor very upset.
Right, and Ms. Hobson even told Ms. Kim to leave.
Yeah, and I got kicked out during that time too. I'm not really sure what I did, but I got roped into the whole thing.
And you saw Ms. Kim taking photos of Mr. Bancroft's body.
Yes, I mean, she's a photojournalist.
But she was taking pictures of the body specifically as well.
Yeah, the whole room, the body, the stuff, everything in there, you know, crime scene photos.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor.
You need a second.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Actually, Your Honor, the plaintiff feels no need to redirect. We only ask that the witness be able to come down from the stand.
Okay, step down.
Thank you.
Thank you. 1 second, please. Alright. Like, do you have a final witness?
At this time, the plaintiff calls Jordan Nathanson to the stand.
Alright.
Mr. Nathanson.
Mr. Nathanson, you are sworn in.
Thank you very much.
May I begin?
Yes,
Could you please state your name for the record?
Jordan Nathanson, nice to meet you guys.
What do you do for a living, Mr. Nathanson?
I'm a private investigator. Most of the time it's just cheating spouses, but like 10% of the time you get a case with some intrigue. That's really what you live for.
Could you tell the court a bit about why you're here?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually on the train for a different job. Kind of fell through, but I was still on the train as a passenger. I saw a couple interesting things along the way, so the plaintiff brought me on, and also, you know, I got to reveal the evidence.
All right, let's start from the top then. What was it like when you boarded the Mid-Riverina Express?
Listen, they do things swanky in Australia, right? We go to board the train, and one of the staff members offers to carry my bags. It's a pride thing. I like to carry my own bags. But he drops me off in my cabin and gives me a key.
What did that key look like, Mr. Nathanson?
looked like a key to the city. All right, it was this beautiful vintage heavyweight key. It had an 8 engraved into the side. I was staying in cabin 8, so that made sense.
Did anything of note happen that first day of the trip?
Yeah, it's weird. We were all the way in Australia, and there were so many people I saw from Midlands. I thought it might be like a family reunion, but in hindsight, I don't think so.
What do you mean family reunion?
Well, I saw Taylor Hobson and her dad, Avery Bancroft, on the train.
Did you ever interact with either of those people?
There was one notable one on the 24th. That was the day before Avery passed away.
Could you tell us about that interaction?
Yeah, I kind of overheard it before I actually was involved in it. There was a ton of shouting coming from cabin 1. That was Avery's cabin. I'm kind of like a curious cat, investigator and all. So I just had to go check it out. Taylor just comes storming out of cabin 1. She looked upset.
Was that the end of that interaction?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna get caught for snooping, so I was gonna turn around and leave, but Avery actually came out and called me in.
What did you guys talk about?
He wanted to hire me. Pretty excited. I thought it might be kind of a cool case, but I ended up turning him down.
What was he trying to hire you for in the first place?
He asked me to look into if anyone could be coming after him. He was worried.
Why didn't you take him up on the offer?
Well, it was kind of a tough decision because he gave me 5 million reasons to take him up on the offer. But I don't think I could do anything for him, and there's just no point wasting his time, his money, and my time.
Was that the last time you talked to him?
Yeah, I guess it was. The next day he passed away.
Could you tell us a bit about that morning?
Yeah, I slept like a rock the whole night, and then someone woke me up at 6 a.m., shaking me, saying someone was dead. So it wasn't your average Sunday morning. But I composed myself, and I was able to examine the scene under the supervision of the Australian police.
Do you know what caused Mr. Bancroft's death?
I was. So I got the chance to review all the pieces of evidence, and I was able to look at the autopsy.
Would you recognize it if I showed it to you?
I would.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm approaching opposing counsel with Exhibit 19B. May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does Your Honor have a copy? What did I just hand you?
This is Avery Bancroft's autopsy.
And what did you glean from that exhibit?
So here's where it gets interesting, right?
Sorry, counsel, is this admitted or what is the status?
Apologies, Your Honor. This is pre-admitted pursuant to Stipulation 6.
Sorry, what was your question?
What did you glean from looking at that document?
All right. Here's where it gets interesting, right? It says here Avery Bancroft died between midnight and 4:45 a.m. And you know what they found in his system?
What'd they find?
Rat poison.
Now, after seeing this, what was your first thoughts in this investigation?
Well, what I was thinking to myself is when I talked to Avery Bancroft earlier, I gave him some advice.
What advice did you give him?
The best kind, free advice. I told him, even though I wasn't taking his case, I said, if you're worried, lock your door. That's what you should
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay to the statements of Jordan Nathanson.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes, briefly.
The witness saying lock your door, there's no truth value, it's a command.
It's not hearsay, you can.
Yes, Your Honor.
Overall.
I told Avery Bancroft, lock your door. Avery told me he would lock his door that night, and he's planning to leave the next
Objection,
day.
Your Honor, to the statements of Avery Bancroft.
Response.
This is an exception to hearsay under Rule 8033, a motive, intent, or plan. Jordan Nathan told him, lock your door that night, and he said, I would. That's a clear plan, that he's gonna lock his door that night.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
Your Honor, in this case, this is being used for the truth of the matter asserted that Mr. Bancroft was going to lock the door, as it is the plaintiff's contention today that all the doors were locked and that only Ms. Hobson would be able to open the door. They are using this to assert that the door was locked and thus only someone with a key would be able to get in.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
I agree. We're using it for the truth of the matter, but this is an exception to hearsay under 8033. It's a plan. Very clearly, I'm gonna lock my door tonight.
Any response?
Your Honor, we maintain that not only is this being used for the truth of the matter asserted, but I don't believe it constitutes a plan. He's agreeing to doing something, but it's the fact that plaintiff counsel is going to be eliciting that the door was locked at the time doesn't necessarily show a plan. It just shows an agreement with what Mr. Bancroft said.
Response on those grounds, Your Honor?
Yes.
That's an issue of weight, not admissibility. It's up for the jury to decide whether or not they believe Avery Bancroft's door was locked that night. This statement does fall under that exception of a motive, intent, or plan.
Any final response?
I stand by my original objection, Your Honor.
The statement is that he planned, can you repeat the statement?
Mr. Nathanson said you should lock your door tonight, and Mr. Bancroft said, I will.
And are you offering it for the truth?
Yes, but it's an exception under 8033.
I'm sorry, 1 second. It's really not an existing mental, emotional, or physical condition. I haven't usually seen.
May I give a different argument then, Your Honor?
Yes.
Earlier today, in court, Mr. Doolittle testified, and he said that the door was locked that night. In which case, we contend that we're not using this for the truth of the matter, just for Mr. Nathanson's subsequent action after hearing this, and then that following morning when Mr. Bancroft was dead, it'll go to his subsequent action in his investigation.
May I respond, Your Honor, on those grounds?
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor, if plaintiff counsel is using this for the subsequent action, there has to be a clear subsequent action resulting from this. If the statement is that I'll lock my door, plaintiff counsel arguing that the subsequent action is the next day Bancroft dies and Mr. Nathanson investigates, that's not the subsequent action. That has no bearing on the statement, and the statement doesn't need to be used to lay that onto the record.
Response, Your Honor?
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Nathanson heard this, and the following morning when Mr. Bancroft was dead, him having heard that statement will go to his subsequent actions, as he will testify once he continues testifying about the fact that him hearing him say I will and Mr. Bancroft being dead led him to try to investigate further, specifically about where that key was.
I don't want to belabor this. I'm gonna sustain the objection because once again, a plan has to be within the state of mind, so a specific statement of a plan is not necessarily their state of mind. We can discuss this further later, but I do think it's a differentiation, and it's just a statement of, it's not a state of mind, so I'm gonna sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Motion to strike defending testimony.
I will, yeah.
Yes,
Not
ma'am.
Nathanson's.
Yes, Your Honor. So, again, Mr. Nathanson, what advice did you give him?
Lock your doors tonight.
So, that following morning, what were your thoughts?
Here's the thing. I was thinking to myself I gave Avery Bancroft that advice. And so I was just wondering if his door was locked, how someone could have gotten in. And that's when I remembered something.
What did you remember?
Well, I had this roommate in my cabin, Kirby Doolittle. Nice guy, he kind of stayed up late watching Severance. But on the first day, he showed me that he had a copy of Avery Bancroft's key. But the thing is, he lost that key.
He lost the key?
He did. On the 23rd, we had some dinner, and he was asking me if I'd seen his key anywhere. At that time, I had it.
Why do you say at that time?
Well, on the 25th, I thought to myself, maybe I should see if anybody has the key. And so I thought I'd go check in on Taylor Hobson.
What happened when you checked in on the defendant?
Well, I was also investigating the scene under the supervision of the Australian police at the time, and I asked Taylor if I could take a peek in her cabin. She was a little apprehensive, but she allowed me to. Here's where it gets interesting, right? She goes to unlock her door, and she uses a key I expect, a key with a cabin with a 3 engraved to the side of it. That makes sense. But also on her keychain is another key, a key with a 1 on it.
Who was staying in cabin 1?
Avery Bancroft.
What happened after that when you checked out the defendant's room?
Well, I go into Taylor Hobson's cabin. I don't really see much, but she just beelines out of there. I mean, well, first she goes to her trash can and picks it up, and then heads out to the trash compactor in the storage room. Thought that was kind of suspicious.
Did you find anything in Taylor Hobson's room?
No, not really. But, and this is kind of gross, the investigator part of my brain was just itching, and I thought her behavior was weird, so I went to the trash compactor in the storage room to see if I could find anything.
What'd you find in there?
Well, I go in it, and there's only one bag in there, the same white bag I saw earlier. And when I opened it up, I saw an empty, crumpled up box of rodenticide.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Nathanson.
Hey, I think I saw you in the courtroom cafe earlier.
I believe so. My name is Harper Quaintance, and I just have a few questions about your testimony.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And I hope you enjoyed your lunch.
Thank you, you too. I want to pick up right where you left off
Sure.
in your discussion about those keys that you mentioned.
Right,
You said that you saw Miss Hobson with a set of keys, right?
right.
You said that one of them had the number 8 or 3?
3 on it.
Right, and then that another one had a 1.
That's correct.
And you'd recognize a picture of these keys if I showed it to you?
No, not a picture of those keys. I saw some, key chains on the train, but not a picture of the cabin keys.
You are familiar with a picture of the cabin keys, aren't you?
No.
You wouldn't recognize Exhibit 16A through C?
Oh, Exhibit 16A through C, those aren't pictures of the cabin keys, those are a picture of Kirby Doolittle's keychain. It's kind of an important distinction.
There's not a key in this exhibit?
Yes, there is, but it's not a cabin key.
What's it a key for?
I'm not sure, you'd have to ask Kirby Doolittle, but it's not a cabin key.
So you can tell us for certain that this is not a picture of a cabin key?
I know what the cabin keys look like. The label on that exhibit, when I received it from the Australian police, was just a photo of Mr. Doolittle's keychain.
Alright, so you
Sorry, I
can't,
can't get more help.
so you can't show us any photos of this key that had a number 1 on it, right?
I know Harley Kim took a bunch of photos on the train, but she doesn't have them either because Taylor Hobson bought all the photos off her. Taylor said she wanted to keep those photos private.
Alright, we can move on from that. You talked about on direct examination about some interactions with Avery Bancroft, didn't you?
Yeah, he wanted to hire me.
Right, you mentioned that he wanted to hire you.
Yeah, he said he was worried someone was gonna come after him.
And Mr. Nathanson, you said you didn't accept it because you didn't think you could do anything for him. That's what you said on direct, correct?
Yeah, I just thought it was kind of an impossible case to crack, but he did try and give me $5 million.
Right, you thought it was an impossible case to crack because Mr. Nathanson, in your opinion, finding who would want to hurt Mr. Bancroft would be like finding a needle in a needle stack.
I agree. I'll also say though, it's generally the people that are closest to you that pose the most threat.
But you believe that it would be a fool's errand to try to find out who would want to harm Mr. Bancroft, don't you?
On a one-day notice from Mr. Bancroft? Definitely.
Yes or no, you would think it's a fool's errand in general.
Objection, Your Honor. I asked that my witness be allowed to finish his answers.
I think you did finish, but,
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. When Mr. Bancroft asked you this, you thought it was a fool's errand, yes or no?
Exactly. A short notice case like that on a 2-day train ride, that's definitely gonna be impossible.
Well, not just short notice, Mr. Nathanson. You think that everyone on the train, except for yourself and the child Bailey Connell, had an axe to grind with Mr. Bancroft.
First of all, Bailey Connell was adorable. Great artist. Second of all, yeah, a lot of people have access to grind with celebrities. I think Taylor's axe might have been the sharpest though.
Right, Mr. Nathanson, but you would agree with me that you believed every single passenger, except for you and this child, had an axe to grind with Mr. Bancroft. Isn't that true?
Right.
And this is why you didn't accept Mr. Bancroft's request.
Part of it was also short notice on a 2-day train ride, but yeah.
And when we talk about all these passengers with an axe to grind, that includes Harley Kim, doesn't it?
Right. It also includes Dana Haskins. There was a Dr. Edmond on the train. I think Kelly Dews, Taylor's partner, wasn't a fan of him either.
Right, so all these passengers were in the platinum section.
That's correct.
But specifically, just to be clear, this includes Harley Kim.
Right.
And in this case, you were testifying for the plaintiff, right?
That's correct. I was hired to testify.
Right, and you're testifying against my client, Miss Taylor Hobson.
Hey Taylor, that's correct.
You just mentioned Miss Shahid hired you. You've known Shannon Shahid for a while, right?
Yeah, she's a beach vendor, and you'd be surprised at how often beach vendors need private investigators.
Right, you work with her several times a year.
Yeah, people like to steal her tips.
You've known her, sorry.
Objection, Your Honor.
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr. Nathan.
That's okay.
Please let the,
People like to steal vendors' tips, so you get hired to track them down, testify in court, things like that.
All right, so you've known Miss Shahid for years.
Couple now.
And you received an email from Shannon Shahid back in February of 2024, right?
Yeah, I forgot all about that until they asked me about it in my deposition. I remember you bringing it up then too, actually.
All right, but you did receive an email?
Yeah, I did.
You'd recognize it if I showed it to you, right?
Yeah, it's been a while though.
Let the record reflect that I am approaching opposing counsel.
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor?
yes.
I'm approaching the witness with Exhibit 27.
Thank you.
Mr. Nathanson, this is the email that you received from Shannon Shahid on February 3rd, 2024, right?
Yes, it is.
It's a fair and accurate copy of that email,
Yes, it is.
and it hasn't been changed or altered in any way since you last saw it.
No.
Your Honor, Defense Office Exhibit 27 into evidence.
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, alright, may I please have a copy, counsel?
Oh, yes, of course, Your Honor. Courtesy copy.
That's right. Exhibit 27, entered into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Mr. Nathanson, you'd agree with me that at the top, Shannon Shahid wrote, "My dear friend Jordan," right?
Yeah, she did.
And you'd also agree with me that at the bottom, she said, "Your favorite client, Shannon." Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, if only she knew how many of my clients send emails to me with that tagline.
Of course, Mr. Nathanson. And I want to direct your attention to that second paragraph in the email,
Right.
starting with "you mentioned."
Right.
You could read along silently as I read aloud.
Right.
You mentioned that you might be in Australia in April for work.
Mhm.
If you have the time,
Objection, Your Honor, to needlessly cumulative. This exhibit is all. May I? This exhibit is already in front of the jury in its entirety. Just reading excerpts onto the record is needlessly cumulative. The jury can already see all of these excerpts.
may I respond, Your Honor?
No need, I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Yes, Your
Counsel opportunity.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Nathanson, going back to that second paragraph, Ms. Shahid wrote, "You mentioned that you might be in Australia in April for work.
Mhm.
If you have the time, you really should check out the Mid-Riverina Express. Super luxury train that goes from Sydney to Perth. In fact, if you can make the April 22nd departure from Sydney, I'd be happy to buy you a ticket, first class, of course, to show my gratitude for all you've done for me." Did I read that correctly?
You did.
Right. Permission to approach and retrieve the exhibit.
Yes.
Mr. Nathanson, so it's true that Ms. Shahid offered to buy you a luxury train ticket for the Mid-Riverina Express, right?
Yeah, she heard I was in Australia for a different job, so she offered, but that didn't really go through.
And like you mentioned earlier, you've been familiar with Ms. Shahid for years.
That's correct.
And it's true that when you first worked with her, you gave her a brochure, right?
Yeah, a long time ago though. I think it was for some hit and run she was in.
Right, but you'd agree that the first time you ever worked with her, you gave her this brochure.
Yeah, because it was a hit and run case, I think.
And it's true that you give this brochure to every prospective client you have at your firm, right?
That's right, and I also just send it out in the general, mailers, junk mail. You might get some from me sometimes.
So you mail this, you give it to every client, and it's also on your firm's website, right?
That's right. I took an HTML class in college.
And you also wrote this brochure yourself.
Yes, I did.
Every word of it.
Yeah, there's also a picture of a dog with some glasses on there. I designed that myself as well.
And Mr. Nathanson, you'd recognize this brochure if I showed it to you.
I would.
Let the record reflect that I'm approaching opposing counsel.
Thank you.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor.
Yes.
Approaching the witness with Exhibit 2.
Thank you.
Courtesy copy, Your Honor.
See that dog I mentioned?
All right, Mr. Nathanson, if you could just take a look and confirm that this is a true and accurate copy of that brochure that you created,
Yes, it is.
and it hasn't been changed or altered in any way.
No, I would.
Your Honor, Defense Office Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Objection?
Objection, Your Honor, to hearsay. If I could actually direct you to a piece of case law, it's on page 5 of that case law tab, at the very bottom. America's Best Cookie versus International House of Waffles. Let me know when you're there.
Yes.
This simply states that although this may vary in different jurisdictions, in Midlands, a witness's own statements are still hearsay.
Okay, that's noted.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes, Your Honor, that is also the defense's understanding of the hearsay law in the Midlands. However, there is an exception to hearsay for this document under Rule 803.6. A record of a regularly conducted business activity, if I may be heard on those grounds.
Yes.
Your Honor, in this case, defense counsel has established that Mr. Nathanson wrote this brochure. It's for his practice, it's on his firm's website, he sends it to clients, and it details information about his practice and the work that he does. The qualifications under 804.6 describe that a record of a regularly conducted business practice must come from someone familiar with the source, must be a regular practice in the business, and the source of the information must not be untrustworthy. In this case, all prongs A through E of 803.6 have been established. This is a regularly conducted business practice. It's an exception to hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes.
If you actually look, not at those prongs, are you at the 803.6 exception in the? If you look at not those prongs, but actually the very top, a record of an act, event, condition, opinion, or diagnosis. This advertisement is none of those. It's an advertisement. His business and his business practice would be his investigations.
Counsel, what about the statements in the exhibit?
I apologize, Your Honor. Can you clarify which part you're asking about?
So you're offering this under 806.
Your Honor,
You're offering this under the regularly conducted activity?
that's right, Your Honor.
And are you intending to offer statements in it for the truth of the matter?
Yes, Your Honor, as they are a part of a regular practice within his business, to share this with clients, detail information about the practices of his firm, and to give this to everyone who hires him to work for them. This is the business advertisement that he gives out that records what he does in his practice and is a regular part of what he does as a private investigator.
Any response?
This doesn't fall under that exception, as I mentioned earlier. It needs to be the records of a regularly conducted activity. One, this is not his regularly conducted activity. You mentioned that he made this brochure once years ago. His regularly conducted activity would be any documents that he keeps in his line of investigation. This wouldn't fall under that.
Is there more foundation you can lay to make this regularly conducted activity, counsel?
Well, Your Honor, I believe that in this case, as Mr. Nathanson has testified, that he gives this to every client, although that the actual information within it doesn't change, it's still detailing the work that he does, is written by him as a private investigator within the context of him as an agent of the work. All prongs have been satisfied because he is familiar with the document. It does detail the regular practices of his business. And the creation of this document, although on a one-time basis, every time it's used is being used as a regularly conducted activity for any person that may hire him for his investigative services. All prongs have been established for this exhibit to be an exception to hearsay.
Any final response?
I simply disagree with defense. I've laid out all the reasons why this doesn't fall under this. If I could specifically even point out prong C, making the record was a regular practice of that activity. This is not a regular practice because it only happened once. For it to be a regular activity, it would need to be, the activity would need to be what the business is doing. This business doesn't make advertisements, they investigate. And so this wouldn't fall under that at all.
I think I have to agree with that last argument. I don't think that is, this business doesn't make advertisements, and then that I'm gonna say, your point is very well taken, but I'm gonna sustain the objection on hearsay.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to approach the witness and retrieve.
Yes.
Mr. Nathanson, like you just mentioned, Shannon Shahid hired you for this case, right?
Mhm.
And you were testifying against Taylor Hobson.
That's correct.
And it's true that if Shannon Shahid wins this trial, you're gonna get $250,000, aren't you?
That's right. It's pretty standard in my practice to do these things on a contingency fee, and that's what I agreed with Shannon. If Shannon wins, I get, I think, 0.1% of whatever she stands to win. So yeah, that's how it's done.
Right, and that 0.1% is $250,000, isn't it?
That's correct.
And this is only if Taylor Hobson is found liable.
That's right. And I'll tell you one thing. In my last 6 contingency fee cases, I've lost 3. So, and MLB, I'm still batting pretty well.
So you're hoping that in this case you prevail.
I mean, I'm just here to testify, and I'll let the lawyers and the judge figure the rest out.
And your testimony could potentially be worth $250,000.
I suppose you could put it like that. I mean, again, in my last 6 cases, I lost 3, so I guess there my testimony is worth nothing.
But maybe not in this case, is it?
I guess not. I'll have to read in the paper to see who ends up winning.
Thank you, Mr. Nathanson.
Thank you.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Any regret?
No, Your Honor, we just asked that Mr. Nathanson be allowed to step down. And at this point, the plaintiff rests his case in chief.
Alright, thank you. How are we doing on time?
We have an hour and 42 minutes till all of us. Maybe 5-10 minutes?
5 minutes, maybe. I would prefer 5 so we can maybe have more time for
Yeah, like a
work
4-minute break.
5.
defense is in
Okay.
that whole
Let's
time.
do 5.
I'm always trying to split the difference. Do we know what that was?
Oh my god. Okay, wait. Oh wait, maybe that's, yeah, it's not. Oh wait, no. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I do not think that is a good idea. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not doing it on person.
And then
I don't think it makes
is
any
the
sense.
oh, we don't.
So I was like, is
No, it's really
the stand set up?
I
Yes. But you guys should
Wait, let's go to the hall, because I don't agree with that at all for us.
You need your hall. I'm not sure, I guess we can find it. I need one. Okay, yeah, well,
Oh.
No.